Hello and welcome to Festive Tech Calendar 2021. My name is Alan Kinane. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer and an Azure cloud architect based in Dublin, Ireland. I'm really pleased to be back presenting another session for the third year running at Festive Tech Calendar. Thanks go out to Gregor and Richard for organising this event. It just gets bigger and better every single year, so great to be a part of that once again. My session today is going to be about how to develop an automated advent calendar static web app. And for this application, we're going to use static web apps in Azure. We're going to use a storage account, and we're going to use GitHub Actions to do the automation piece. One of the great things about this is that it's going to virtually cost me absolutely nothing. The static web app itself is a free service. GitHub Actions is free. And my storage cost will be virtually zero because we're just going to be using some small table storage there. Now, I'm no developer, so don't expect this to be anything groundbreakingly amazing, but this application is going to use some basic skills. I'm just going to use some basic HTML code and be able to automate the updating of that using GitHub Actions. As you may be aware, you can use various static site generators for static web apps in Azure, but we're not going to do any of that stuff today. This is purely going to focus on HTML and how to automate the updating of that on a daily basis. So I'm just going to quickly show you what the final product will be once we've completed this deployment. So here's what I'm looking to build. As you can see, very, very basic indeed. I've just got some plain HTML content here with a holding image. And what's going to happen then, every day at midnight, this is going to update and produce a blog post from my own website, azureallen.ie, on a daily basis. So at midnight, a random post is published here, and then you can click on the post on the left, and that will bring up that page from my website. So the idea is that this works very much like an advent calendar. Every day you open a new window, and it's a new surprise. It's a new randomly published blog post from my website. So it's going to be pretty basic, nothing groundbreaking like I said, but it was a lot of fun for me to build. So I'm going to explain how this works now. Okay, so let's start with the code. Going to be very simple again, so let's just look at the index page. Very little HTML code here, as I said, just some holding images and text there. I'm going to be using iframes to show the main content page, so that's where you click on the links, and then the actual calendar page where the blog posts are published to. So the calendar page at the moment just has some style settings in it, that's it. What's going to happen then at the end of each day is I'm going to add some additional HTML code to this file, and that's what's going to appear in that left-hand side iframe. I do have some Powershell scripts that I'm going to be using. The first one is just going to be run initially before we do anything more. So what I've decided to do here with the blog posts is my site is hosted on WordPress, so that has an RSS feed built into it. I'm just going to query that feed for random blog posts, and I'm just going to store them in a table in a storage account. The reason why I'm doing that is because I don't want any duplicates. I don't have a huge amount of blog posts on my site, so there's a very good chance that some duplicates would appear if I didn't do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to store 31 blog posts in table storage, 31 for 31 days in December, and I'm just going to make sure that those are unique for each day of the month, so I'm not repeating any of those blog posts. I'll run this initially. I'm going to loop through this 31 times, fetching a random post through the RSS feed, and then I'm going to see if that already exists in my table storage. If it does, I'm just going to go again, fetch another random post, and then see if that exists or not. If it doesn't exist, I'm just going to add it as a row to that table. I'm just going to cycle through that until I have 31 unique blog posts. So pretty simple, really. Then what's going to happen then is every day at midnight, I'm going to run this PowerShell script, and what that's going to do is it's going to fetch the corresponding day from that table. So if it's the first of the month, it's going to take the first row. If it's the second of the month, it's going to take the second row, and so on. It's going to fetch those pieces of information, the blog title and the URL link, and it's going to grab the date and put it into the format that I want, and then it's just very simply just going to add some basic HTML content to that calendar.html file that I showed you earlier. So these will just all feed in here, and then hopefully I'll end up with something like this. So it's pretty simple, really. I suppose the magic is in the scripting and then also in the GitHub Actions. But we're jumping ahead of ourselves here, so let's start at the beginning. So back to our code. This is the best place to start. I have my code already built. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to want to set up a GitHub repo because a static web app needs to have a GitHub repository to source the information. So I have my files here ready to go already. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to initialize a new repository. Okay, so these are all ready to go. I'm going to call this initial upload. And I'm going to call this repo festive calendar app. And I'm going to make it a public repository. So this code will be available afterwards if you want to check it out. Okay, so that's a repository created. Let's just log into GitHub and make sure that's there and that's successfully created. Okay, here you can see the repository has been created successfully in GitHub. So there's all my files that I have so far. So that's a good start. We have our repo ready to go. Now we can go straight into the Azure portal and start setting up our static web app. Okay, so here we are in the Azure portal. Let's go ahead and deploy our static web app. Let's create a new one, new resource group. We'll call it Azure Alan Calendar. Same name, Azure Alan Calendar. We're going to use the free tier because we're not using any APIs, so this will be completely free. I'm going to choose my nearest region there. And this is where we link it to our GitHub repository. So I'm just going to sign into my GitHub account now. Authorize that and then choose the repository that we created already. Festive calendar app. We'll choose the master branch. I don't need to set any build presets as I'm not using any frameworks or static site generators, so I'll set this to custom. Tags are important. Please use these in production environments especially. I'm just going to skip over this for this demonstration. And this should only take a few seconds to deploy. And I'll have my static web application environment ready to go. That's done. Just to show you quickly, if I click on the custom URL it gives you by default, it's now waiting for content. Let's just jump into GitHub here, into my repositories, festive calendar app repository. Here's all the files that I synced from my Visual Studio Code environment, and in addition the static web app has created this workflow. This workflow is what keeps the static site up to date. So every time you do a push or a pull on your repo, it will run this as a GitHub action. That should be running right now, in fact. So this is actually building that static content from the files that I've already synced into my GitHub repo. So that's building that site right now. I'll give that a few minutes to complete. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is go back to the Azure portal and add a custom domain. This is completely free. You can add custom domains which will be secured by HTTPS. Again, completely free of charge. It just makes it easier for people to find your site, so we may as well go ahead and do this. I have a domain already registered. Azure Alan Calendar.ga. And now we just need to add our DNS record, so I'll just copy this link. And I'm using a site called Freenom, which is great for testing purposes. It allows you to register some free domains for up to a year. So let's just add this record. It's a CNAME record and add our target there and save. Okay, that's our DNS record added. So we just need to wait a few minutes now for that DNS record to propagate. Usually within 5 minutes it's done, and then I can click the add button down here and add our custom domain. Okay, you can see my custom domain has now been added. That's it there. Let's just make that the default. So you're always going to have this custom one that's provided by Azure, and now I've got my own vanity domain added there. If I just go back to the overview page quickly, and let me just click now on this URL here, what you'll find is because I've changed my default domain, it's actually showing my custom domain here. So that's now working and resolving to the website. The content, as you can see, it's just showing the static content that I synced to my GitHub repository, and then that was built using the CI/CD pipeline that comes with the static web app. So that built the website as it is. Not much there at the moment, just some titles and images. No blogs as yet, but that will come later. Okay, it's time to create our table storage now. So again, this is being used as a database, I suppose. So rather than using something like Azure SQL, we're just going to use storage tables within a storage account, as it's going to be nice and simple and perfect for our needs. Also, the cost will be practically free. So let's create a storage account for this. New storage account. I'm going to use the same resource group, which is our calendar. Pick my home region of North Europe. And Azure Allen Blogs, that's a perfect name for this. Standard is fine. I'm just going to use locally redundant storage, nice and cheap. I don't really need any of the advanced settings here, so I'll just go straight ahead and create the account. Okay, that's ready, so let's just go and create a table. Just call it blogs, and that's where all my blogs will be held, in this table here. Okay, so my table is ready to go. Let me just check all my names are correct for my script. So the table is called blogs, the storage account is called Azure Allen Blogs, and the resource group name is Azure Allen Calendar. So if I go back to my PowerShell script, I need to make sure these match. So what's going to happen is it's going to check the RSS feed from my website. That's the link for it. These are the variable names that I just checked. And then it's going to populate the table by iterating through this script here. As I said, 31 times, one for every day of the month of December. So that's all good to go now. So I can just run this script directly from VS Code. I've actually already logged into my account here. So I can just very quickly run the script from here. So as you can see, it's detecting some duplicates there and just making sure it's not re-adding those to the table. And that's it. That only took a few seconds to run. So my table is now populated, and we can check that very easily using Azure Storage Explorer. So if you're not familiar, Azure Storage Explorer is an application you can download, and it's great for being able to work with Azure Storage accounts. So I have it open here. Maximize that. So here's my subscription, and there is the account I created. If I just drill into that, I should be able to see my table. Table blogs. And there's the data. So as you can see, I'm using the row key to identify the day of the month. So first of the month, second of the month, third of the month. That's the blog that will appear on that particular day. Here's a link to that particular blog post and then a title. So these are 31 unique blog posts from my website, just from that script. So that's great. I have my data in the table. That's not going to change now. I don't need to update this because this is a static calendar. It is what it is now. The surprise will be when you go to the website, you will see a new post each day of the month, but that will only be published at midnight for each day. But that's perfect. That's my script done and my table populated. So my next task is to get my workflow created in GitHub Actions so that it will actually publish that new blog post at midnight every day. Okay, back to VS Code now, and let's have a look at our existing workflows. So again, this is the one that comes with static web apps that actually builds your application for you. I'm going to need to add a new workflow here. So I'm going to create a new file in the workflows folder here. So let's just go to new file, call it daily update.yaml. So this is a YAML file, and I have this prepared earlier. So let me just copy and paste this in. Indentation is very important with YAML, so you need to make sure it's set up correctly to work. Just to run through how this will run then. So it runs on a cron schedule, so basically this runs at midnight every night, but only during the month of December. So this is an advent calendar. It's only meant to update during the month of December, so I've just set it to only run for December. I've added in an additional workflow so that this can be run manually if necessary. I don't have to just wait for the schedule, I can run it manually. We'll build on an Ubuntu service. First step is to log into Azure, so it needs to authenticate, so I will need to add some Azure Credentials, which I will do later on and show you how that works. Then it's going to check out the code, run the Powershell script to actually update the calendar. I'll give you a look at that in a moment, and then commit the changes to the repository. So the code then in my PowerShell script, what that's going to do is it's going to install some PowerShell modules required for the storage account. There's my variables for my blog posts, going to get the current date. Then it's going to get the row from the table. So again, the row key will match the current day. So remember row ID 1 for the first of the month and so on. And it's going to fetch the title and link from the blog post. And then what it's going to do is just going to create some HTML and add it to the calendar file. Now, a couple more little things I just want to include here. So just with the CI/CD job there, I just want to make a few changes there. So this normally runs when you do a pull or a push to your GitHub repository. I want to take that out, so I don't want that to actually kick in there. What I do want to happen is I want this build to occur when my daily update file is completed. So this daily update file is actually named daily update with new blog post content. So when that runs at midnight and that job completes, then I wanted to build my new static content. I think that's all the changes I have for now. So that should be everything. So I'm just going to sync that repo again, commit those changes. So commit and sync. Okay, so really the last thing I need to do is I need to create my Azure credentials so that the GitHub action can actually access my Azure environment. So I'm going to create a service principal for that purpose. So let's go back to the Azure portal again. Okay, now service principals can be created using scripting, and that's normally what I would do, but just to give you an idea how this can be done visually using the portal, we can register a new app. So let's again call it Azure Alan Calendar SP. Register that. Now we need to capture some pieces of information here. So for the credentials for GitHub, I'm going to need the tenant ID and the Azure subscription ID. I'm also going to need the client ID of the service principal, which is this piece of information. And then I'm going to need to create a secret. So I need to go into certificates and secrets here, create a new client secret. Expire after 6 months is fine because I'm not going to be using it beyond December. And let's just copy that value. Okay, so I need to go back to my GitHub environment now. And under settings, from my repository, I can add a secret. So the static web app has a secret created automatically for you. I need to create a new one. And Azure Credentials is what I want to call it. I'm going to paste that in here. So I've got the client ID I just copied along with the client secret for the service principal. I've got my Azure subscription ID and I've got my tenant ID. So I need to save those now. So again, these are used by my workflow to authenticate to my Azure subscription. One more thing I need to do here now is I need to give that permission to access my Azure environment. So if I go in to my resource groups, so I want to give the least possible permissions, so I'll just set this at the resource group level. Although really I could set it at the account level, I suppose, but let's just set at the resource group. Add a role assignment. Now the role I need to provide here with the least privileges is called reader and data access. There we go. That's just enough permissions required to read the data in the table storage. That's all the service principal needs to do. So there's my service principal. Select that and assign access. Okay, so now I've got permissions. Everything should be good to go. So let's go back to GitHub and just check everything looks good. Let's have a final look at our code. Everything's there. I've got my Powershell scripts there ready to go. I should have 2 workflows now. So there's the daily update one that I've added. Again, this should only run at midnight during the month of December. We're not quite there yet in December, so this isn't going to do anything until then, but I can always run it manually and see what happens. So this is where the Azure Credentials secret gets picked up. So then now that I've added that and given it permissions, it should work. So if I go into GitHub Actions here, and I'm going to run the daily update manually, and let's see what happens. Okay, so the build has been initiated. Let's just watch this run, and hopefully everything will be successful. So job being set up, logging into Azure. Okay, so we logged in successfully. Code has been checked out successfully as well. My Powershell script is now running. So this is the part that updates the HTML content with that new blog post. Committing the file changes and pushing. And checkout. So that's completed successfully. Now I need to make sure that, yes, there we go. So because this is now completed, my CI/CD job is now running, and that should update the actual website content. So let's just have a quick look at the code here. So this is a calendar.html file, which should now have some additional content in there. So there we go. This is recorded on the 21st of November. So that's picked out row 21, row ID 21, and added this blog post to the content. So let's just go back and wait for the build of the actual website to complete. So once this completes, we can refresh the static web app, and that blog post should now be visible. Okay, that's completed now, all green, that should be good. So if we go back to our web application now, and if I refresh this, there we are, 21st November, and there's my blog post. So it works. So now, of course, we don't want this to run manually, we just want this to run on the schedule. So if you return to this site, www.azurealancalendar.ga, from any time after the 1st of December, you should see a number of blog posts appear here on the left-hand side. And that's how to build an automated advent calendar using Azure Static Web Apps and GitHub Actions. So thank you very much. I hope you found that useful. Like I say, I'm not a developer at all, but I found that quite fun to figure out how to get it to work. It's amazing the power of the services available in Azure these days. So hope that might help some people or give you a few ideas for things yourself. If you want to check out the code I used, check out my GitHub repo. The address is up there on the page. Of course, the live calendar itself, which should be updated throughout the month of December, is available on www.azurealancalendar.ga. Please do give me a follow on Twitter. My handle is Azure_Alan, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if you want to reach out to me. And if you're interested, I do have my blog website, which was obviously showcased heavily today, but the website for that is azurealan.ie. So again, thanks very much, and thanks very much to the organizers, Gregor and Richard. A lot of great effort put into this. I really love doing this event every year, and I hope to keep doing it for many years to come. And please do check out all of the other brilliant sessions that are available throughout the month of December. Other than that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy Christmas, happy holidays, and here's to a great 2022. Bye.